Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time. In this, our penultimate entry in our 90s Stallone season. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Murphy, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the action disaster flick, Daylight. Oh, and who do I mean by we? Well, of course, I'm alongside me to talk about this one is my regular co-host. You know him. He is the Bloodhound Picks co-host, screenwriter, and a man who always has an instinct for the torque of any given situation. It's Mr. Craig Draheim.
I'll never leave you behind, Scott, unless you break your neck. Then I'll have to.
Oh, that's nice to know. Good to know that, like, in 90% of situations, you'll keep me alive unless I break my neck, and then that's me done for. More of which on later. So some background on this one before we get stuck into it. Daylight was released in the US on December 6th, 1996. It was directed by Rob Cohen, whose notable credits include Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, Dragonheart, the first Fast and the Furious film, and Triple X. And so that's what he's famous for as a director. He's also become much more problematic in recent years, given the very dark and disturbing allegations made against him. But unfortunately, we cannot go into that because we just don't have the space to give to stuff like that, the kind of appropriate space and the respect that it kind of deserves. But if you want to read about it, just type in Rob Cohen allegations, and it makes for very depressing reading. Moving on, it was written by Leslie Boehm, who also wrote Nowhere to Run and Dante's Peak, another disaster film. Review-wise, it is currently sitting at 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb, 27% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 41 reviews. It doesn't have a Metacritic score, and it's got a 2.8 on Letterboxd. At the box office, the movie made $159.2 million off of an $80 million budget, so while not a total flop, was definitely not what Universal would have been hoping for. Although it is interesting to see the breakdown of those numbers, as it very much did flop in the US, making a paltry $33 million at the US box office. But abroad, it made the other $126.2 million, making it a much bigger success overseas, which is kind of interesting to me because I always think of Stallone being like a very American star, but no, did much better worldwide, this one.
And I think the disaster films they normally appeal abroad a little bit more, what I've noticed.
Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of the disaster films seem to make their money back overseas more than, other types of the action genre. Well, I don't know if this one's fully in action, but, the adventure action element.
Yeah, I mean, I think it still counts as an action film. I mean, that's part of the reason why we're covering it. But,
yep.
Yeah. But we do, we kind of followed a bunch of kind of themes in this season for Stallone. And one of those themes is Stallone has very much, even though unsuccessfully, he's managed to keep on trend. And with this movie, he once again keeps on trend, as 1996 was the year kind of the disaster film came back in a big way, with, even though Independence Day's sci-fi alien invasion movie kind of works like a disaster flick, and also in 96 there was Twister, and then in the years after, in 97, there was the rival volcano flicks, Dante's Peak, as we mentioned, and Volcano, and obviously Titanic was the most successful film ever made up until Avatar in 2009. And then in 98, you have the rival asteroid flicks in Armageddon and Deep Impact, and you also have the much less successful Hard Rain at the start of 98. So there's a kind of clump of disaster flicks kind of in the mid to late 90s.
And yeah, it also feels like, which I know we'll get into it more, but on brand with what Stallone was doing in the 90s that we've talked about is him still even though it's still an action movie, it's him branching away from, the one-man army or whatever he was considering that he was doing in the 80s. Like him trying to take the more dramatic approach.
That's very true, because having listened to a couple of interviews from the time, he was talking about in one of the interviews I watched that he was looking more to try and get the scripts, the kind of scripts that Pacino gets or Harrison Ford gets. That was, the exact quote there. And, he felt that he'd been kind of typecast as the one-man army type, from kind of Rambo 2 onwards. And he mentioned in the interview as well that he did have a lot more dialogue in films in the kind of late 70s, early 80s, and he kind of wanted to go back to that. And you can tell by the kind of choices he's made of he is kind of going towards less out and out action and more kind of character based stuff, even if it doesn't, as we've kind of talked about, hasn't been entirely successful in something like The Specialist, in something like Assassins, where, and it's interesting as well because I do feel like these films, The Specialist, Assassins, this film kind of make up this little mini forgotten trilogy of they occupy an odd space in Stallone's filmography. They're not quite as unknown as some of his early 2000 work, like Driven or the Avenging Angel or Detox or whatever, or it's some of his kind of late 70s, early 80s work like Nighthawks and Fist and stuff like that. They're not quite as unknown as that, but they are kind of, people seem to have either hazy, they don't really know them, or they have kind of hazy memories of them of isn't that one with Banderas? Isn't that one with, Sharon Stone? Isn't that one that has the big explosion in the tunnel? But they're not, it's kind of hazily remembered. And I've kind of always grouped those three films kind of together because they occupy this kind of odd space. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah. No, I do, especially watching them for the sake of this podcast revisiting everything. You can kind of see it, I think, firsthand.
And it's weird as well because you see these kind of different threads kind of joining up, because having watched them for the season, in a kind of odd way, this movie kind of makes a kind of companion piece to Cliffhanger, in that the character is quite similar in terms of he's trying to get redemption for an accident, which we do see at the start of Cliffhanger, and we kind of don't see here. We just hear about this kind of thing, that this mission he led as an emergency medical worker, and it ended up some of his team died due to some of the decisions he made, and that's how he got fired and stuff. And it is this kind of whole kind of redemptive story that kind of runs quite similarly to Cliffhanger.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was going to say, it feels like, because we've talked about as well where in the 90s it was you had Specialist and then Assassins, which they feel like it is the same character and same plot elements in a way, and then as you were just saying with those two, and then you have Demolition Man then kind of merging into Judge Dredd. Yeah,
and they have a lot of mirrored plot elements. Yeah,
that's said.
So it's just interesting kind of watching them as a run together and seeing these kind of mirrored elements kind of throughout, and how there's these themes that run through different periods of his career, and this is very much these strong themes that run through this kind of 90s patch. But
And
like before we get into the plot of the movie, you know, like I did want to talk a little bit about how many times have you seen this movie before? Had you seen this movie before watching it for the podcast?
So I watched it when it first came out. I think on VHS because my parents rented it. And then it's the same as we talked about, but not to the same extent, I guess, as Assassins for the last episode, where I've caught clips of it every couple of years or when it's on TV, but never enough. Whereas Assassins, I would be more willing to leave it on and just watch it through to the end, which I'd always come in by the time they were in Puerto Rico. Where this, it's like come in like at, I don't even remember, like the point where he has to blow up the water sections to stop the flooding. Like it'll be little bits like that. But and then what I also realized is how much how I guess old we're getting, or how dated we're getting, and not realizing it because I'm like, oh yeah, I must have watched it in its entirety only a few years ago, and then thinking back, like, oh, 20 years ago or more.
Yeah,
I haven't watched this movie.
Yeah, I would be the same. I think I can't remember if I rented it or caught it on TV, but I'd probably be around 12 or 13 when I first saw it, and I've only seen it all the way through once before rewatching it for this. And yeah, so that's obviously a long time ago. You know, like I maybe caught this in like 98 or something. So, you know, like 23 years ago. And then I've got kind of little bits of it. It's weird as well because I feel like, you know, rewatching The Specialist, rewatching Assassins, even though I'd only seen them all the way through, you know, once before rewatching them for the podcast, I feel like I had remembered kind of little bits and pieces about those films in more than I remembered about this movie. I mean, essentially the thing I remembered about this movie was just the explosion at the start. Like the big tunnel explosion. Yeah. And then like pretty much everything else was just a blank.
Well, it kind of fits like that too because there's a ton of information in the opening, you know, 30, 40 minutes. And then but it's a lot of information that either is thrown out in terms of, as we talked about before recording, in terms of character development, or plot elements, or then the rest of the movie in itself just kind of blurs through a scene after scene of trying different things to escape, or, you know, and it becomes this like big blur of stuff. Even watching it, you know, last night when I did for this recording, it's still probably going to be difficult for me to be like, oh yeah, you know the scene by scenes when it happened.
Well, luckily I watched it this morning, so hopefully I've taken accurate notes down. Like, yeah, it does get less and less memorable as the movie goes on, but we'll try and remember as best we can. I think we've got this, you know, like I've taken good enough notes. I'm sure you have too. We've got this. Okay, so let's start. And so we open with some fun whooshy credits that go through a kind of CGI tunnel, and then we get the big title card, Daylight. And then we cut to our opening scene where the CEO of, well, he's probably not the CEO, the foreman of Evil Inc. Is doing a dodgy deal with a dodgy contractor to get rid of some toxic waste. And and it's funny as well because like they're taking the Holland Tunnel to New Jersey, and my thought was, you know, like this toxic waste is going to Tromaville, because that's what this opening scene seemed to me of, just in terms of its general campiness.
Yeah, and for those that have seen it before and are or will watch it because of this podcast, it does not fit with the rest of the movie, except one other scene that we talked about before recording that also feels like it came out of a Troma film. And yeah, it's very on the nose. It's like taking all this toxic waste from New York to New Jersey, and then it feels like a setup that isn't even necessary. You could just have an explosion, I feel, but I don't know why that plot element is in there, but it is.
Yep. I mean, to be fair, it entertained me, so, you know, like, maybe it was worth the addition. But, like, yeah, it does not need to be there. We could have just, I mean, I suppose I suppose it's kind of, we're given just a little bit of character development in these kind of opening scenes, like, coming up where we kind of meet all the characters. But yeah, this kind of section, we don't really need that much, but it's here anyway. But then, like, basically we get the introduction to all our survivors, all the people who are going to survive the disaster that's going to happen very soon in this movie. We get brief introductions to them all. So we get a little brief introduction to George, who's played by Stan Shaw. We get a little brief introduction to Madeline, who's played by Amy Brenneman, who is, like, that's one of those things that makes this movie very 90s. Of just being like, remember when Amy Brenneman was going to be a thing?
Yeah, I had the whole movie watching it, I was thinking about that. Like, what happened to her? I felt like I saw her a bunch at one point, and then just didn't anymore.
Well, at this point, she's like guns a-blazing. She's like, you know, she's been a big hit on the first season of NYPD Blue. She was in Heat the year before this. You know, she's in this. It seems like a rising star, and I don't know, just tailed off, I suppose. Went back to doing TV, I think. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what happened.
Well, and then the whole. So the opening, it gives this kind of, I know we talked about it prior, we probably will more, but it's interesting enough that it kind of sets these arcs for each character where you're watching her and she's a failed playwright who's basically living in a rat-infested, cockroach-infested New York apartment and has just decided to leave the city. You get this family, they're going on a family vacation with, because it's been revealed that the father had an affair, and this is like how they're going to this was them making amends. You get this older couple who are taking the dog, which I won't spoil the reason for the dog, but to a special vet or something in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like all these different things where you're getting to see these characters and thinking, oh, well, like this might be like more of this ensemble piece, and we get to see all these nice little arcs, or each character seems to have these things that they're trying to overcome, or that they can overcome in this. And then we'll find out as we talk more that those are kind of thrown to the wind. But, you know, it does kind of have had a nice setup for something that could be really interesting.
Yeah. I think, like, some of the characters get set up better than others. Like, I do get that the Creighton family, they are given this kind of bickering dynamic, mainly caused by Steve Creighton, played by J.O. Sanders. Their setup is fine, I guess. But it's a bit kind of like, yeah, I don't know if it's the best. And then, like, the old couple, like, their setup is just, like, very skimmed over. Like, basically, the characters who get the best setup is George and Madeline and Roy Nord, who is played by Viggo Mortensen, and he's kind of the dick character of the movie, but he is quite an entertaining dick. And I also like that we get introduced to him at a board meeting and they play this like advert that they're doing for their extreme sports company. How very 90s of them. And it kind of, I don't know, like it kind of felt like Scrooged or something. You know what I mean?
I do. Even though, he's obviously full of himself and he has these elements, he never feels like a full-on dick. Like the character that I think that type of character would normally be portrayed as. Throughout it, you watch him anytime he's on screen and you're like, well, I mean, you're kind of egotistical or you're vain, but you don't actually seem that horrible. You seem like you're trying to help out or things like that when they get into the situation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, it's one of those things that we discussed before the podcast started, that I very much thought that he was going to be set up to be the William Arthurton character, like William Arthurton's character in Die Hard or William Arthurton's character in Ghostbuster, or, that kind of thing where you're just like, Jesus Christ, this character, I just want to strangle him, but kind of isn't. You just kind of roll your eyes at him and go like, yeah, a bit of a dick, but like, you seem like you kind of want to help out too, so like, not terrible.
Yeah, so I guess it spends a lot of time, and actually Stallone's character is almost is brushed over the most, it feels like, in terms of, or skimmed over, where he's just the cabbie or the chauffeur for like this doctor, these two doctors that are, I guess, were at either a seminar or they were doing something, and they almost get highlighted a little bit more than him, I feel, in those initial scenes.
Yeah, because they're having like this kind of back and forth conversation, and then he just comes in for like a quick quip, and then that's it. Like, I almost feel like this scene of his introduction is just put in there just because they want him quite early on in the film. Because, like, in terms of, this being a Stallone film, Stallone is generally introduced straight away. Like, the first time we see him is 10 minutes into the film. And then, we kind of don't see him again for a little while. And then we see him again when the disaster happens. And it feels like the film would naturally introduce him when he is introduced when the disaster happens, but that is even longer into the film. And considering apparently his fee for this was $17.5 million, which is 21% of its $80 million budget.
Yeah, insane. But I know, as we were
also,
kind of discussing,
I just wanted to mention this as well, because I was surprised by this. This movie had a budget of $80 million. Independence Day apparently had a budget of $75 million. And that movie looks way bigger than this movie.
Yeah, I guess they were able to utilize their funds a little bit better instead of paying for Stallone.
I suppose like they had no actors that would have commanded that sort of fee, I suppose. Even like Will Smith at the time wasn't like Will Smith now, or Will Smith even like a few years from Independence Day, because it was just like Fresh Prince, Bad Boys, and then Independence Day. Yeah,
because I know with that one, that was kind of his attempt to become Mr. July, or whatever they used to call it, where he wanted to take on a sci-fi action movie because that was kind of where the big money was at, or that's how you got notarized, or stuff like that. So
yeah, fair enough. I mean, it worked for him. I mean, Independence Day was the biggest film of 1996.
Yeah, and it did kind of blast his career into whatever it was. Well, I guess not as much now, but for that time, for that decade-long period where he could do no wrong, it felt like, even when he was in movies that flopped.
Yeah, I just bounced back immediately. But this is not the Independence Day episode, so we'll get back to talking about Daylight. So yeah,
Yes.
let's talk about the other Tromaville moment of this movie.
So we have this character who he's coming out of, it looks like a jeweler shop, and with a case attached to his arm, and then these punks or thieves, I guess, they steal his case and then steal his car. But the punks look like, again, they're straight out of a 1980s Troma, Class of Nukem High, whatever it may be, movie where they have the short dyed hair and the,
one of them has like a face tattoo,
black leather. Yeah.
It does feel
and
very 1980s.
Again, it doesn't fit with it. Yeah.
It's like, you would recognize these punks because they're like, yeah, you would recognize these punks because they are the exact sort of same punks that was in every horror stroke vigilante movie of the 1980s.
Yes. And this is 1996, so, it's a few years off.
Yeah, about 10, probably.
Yeah. So then they get into this car chase, and they're even warned because the car has it's something where the car has a tracker on it, and they decide to swerve go into the tunnel to kind of escape.
It has a fax machine in it. Like, the car has a fax machine, and a fax comes out. It says, like, oh, this is electronically guarded, and, the police are being notified now, kind of thing.
Yeah, and the police instantly kind of jump on their tail. It's like right when they read the fax, then a cop puts on their sirens behind them, and they decide to go into the tunnel, and which goes for a kind of long scene as they're heading from New York to New Jersey, and they're smashing into other cars, and there's like a cabbie who it doesn't want to let them through and is flicking them off, and it goes on for a while, and we get to see the command center of the tunnel, and they're kind of we're introduced to Grace and some of the others, and they're watching this happen, and calling on people and saying that, to shut down or notify the New Jersey Police Department or things like that. Yeah.
And there's a bit where I was entertained by like some of the bits in this sequence where, like, for example, the jewelry thieves like ram a car for like no reason. They just like ram into the back of a car and then go off, continuing their high speed getaway through this tunnel.
Yeah, and it just, I don't know, a lot of the elements seem like it was just added for more effects driven stuff, but yeah, like that ramming of the car. There were so many points in that kind of high speed chase. I was like, they're just smashing into stuff to smash into it. They're not even.
Yeah, it does feel very Demolition Derby.
Trying to get away. Yeah.
Yeah, no, these characters definitely had like a death wish, I think. But like, it's kind of fun, like, it's kind of intercut with, the characters who are going to be our main characters, this kind of chase. Like we get, randomly we get a history lesson of the Holland Tunnel when we're visiting the Crichton family. And, we get, Madeline, like, singing a kind of parody version of New York, New York. As she's leaving town, she's heading back to where she's from, which I think's Indiana or something, she says later on in the film.
Yeah. I think, it was Indiana or Illinois. I think it was Indiana.
Yeah, right. Okay. And, so that's quite fun. And then we get the big explosion, which I have to say that, it's a great effect. It stands up. I think, they did it, a lot of it practically. It really still looks impressive all these years later, 25 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. So the car of the Troma punks smash into the Troma toxic waste.
Why is there not more of these Troma characters? Why don't we have more time with them? It's so sad.
And so that's all the Troma jabs that we can make after this point, because then it shoots this wall of fire that then you watch basically go down the whole tunnel. and all these cars are swerving, and the survivors survive because, as we talked about off air, they duck, I guess.
Yeah.
That's why they survive and not all the countless other people.
Yeah, so we see other cars with passengers who are just like, it's like Pompeii, like these people have been vaporized, and yet these survivors have, we don't know how they survived. We don't know how their cars didn't melt like the many other cars, and we don't know how they stayed in one piece when other people had just been literally flambéed. It's very confusing. Oh, when we were introducing the characters, I suppose we forgot to mention that there is a group of juvenile delinquents, one of which is played by Sage Stallone, who we previously saw in Rocky V. So there's a few characters. There Vincent, Kadim, and Latonya, and one other character I can't remember the name of right now. But
is that the one from Hackers? I can't.
Mikey, that's the name of the character.
Yep.
Mikey, played by Renoli Santiago, who the director had seen in Dangerous Minds. So that's why he was cast.
Okay.
And that is the same with the actor who plays Kadim, Marcelo Thedford. He was also in the previous year's film Dangerous Minds, and that's why they got cast.
Yeah. And you get, again, I don't know, they're kind of skimmed over a little bit, and even the little bit that they really, you only get to see Sage give more of the reason why he's, I guess, a juvenile delinquent or going to juvie, and then after that, they kind of just become background characters, I feel.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, of the group,
point,
Vincent's kind of the most important in terms of, like, what goes on, but like even he doesn't get that much to do. So yeah, they do very much feel like they're just totting up the numbers. Yeah.
So the explosion happens and the whole entrance crumbles right in front of Kit, also known as Stallone, as he's driving these doctors, and they slam on the brakes, and he jumps out and is just like right on cue of kind of saving the day and giving commands and orders to people. And even the doctors that were in his car who are now helping out, they're kind of saying, I thought you were just a chauffeur. But he's giving a lot of information or a lot of commands that would suggest he is more than a chauffeur, especially when one of the EMTs see him and know exactly who he is and tells him to get out of there because he would get arrested.
Yes, because it's implied that he was part of the emergency medical services, but he was fired from his job, and that's why his friend in the services kind of advises him to kind of get away from the scene. Although I do like, it's an interesting thing because throughout the movie, obviously, Stallone has picked these slightly more character-driven roles. He's not wanting to be this kind of one-man army kind of, superhero action figure kind of guy. And he's given this, like, it's given a bit more kind of weight, and he's a more vulnerable character. However, he is kind of given this kind of great hero introduction in the way that he has this interaction with his former friend from the emergency medical services, where Stallone says, "Where's the chief?" And the other guy is like, says, "Standing right in front of me as far as I'm concerned." Yeah.
And I agree completely. And I know it'll come up more as we mention all the all the Poseidon adventure riffs on and stuff like that, but it seems like they're trying to set up this character that is more broken down and more of this redemption story. But I don't know if it's because of Stallone's ego or what that we've, realized throughout this season especially, that like he doesn't want to be fully the downtrodden character that I guess the script or the movie is trying to make him out to be.
Yeah, he seems to be in two minds, because he does kind of, because he seems to be trying to stray away from the superhero action kind of guy, and wants to be more grounded, but he doesn't want to be too grounded. Yeah. And then, so after that, we kind of get him like arguing with the new chief,
who they keep calling Mr. California, I guess. Because I'm assuming they brought him in from California. Yeah. And he doesn't see, since he's a West Coast person, he doesn't know the area like Kit does. And because Kit knew back in 1994, they did a simulation that the only way to secure the tunnel if a terrorist attack was to happen in there, that they would have to blow certain beams or things like that. But Mr. California, new chief, doesn't want to listen. And it costs him.
Well, yeah, it costs him in a big way. This is the kind of third and kind of last really cartoony scene before the more serious, more melodramatic tone of the movie kind of comes in, where Mr. California, as he is referred to a couple of times, he is talking to a female EMT called Bloom. And she comes out of like this little tunnel and says like basically, oh no, it can't be done. We can't do it that way. We need to find another way. And then Mr. California says the person who says it can't be done is interrupted by the one who just did it, and then walks into the tunnel, and it immediately collapses and kills him.
Yeah. Well, and what's so great about it afterward is, Kit isn't there to find out that he's been killed, but when it's revealed to him later, there's like no remorse on any of that crew member. They're just like, oh, he was pancaked. Is that how they phrased it? Like nobody apparently cared about this new chief.
Oh dear. And we should point out that the guy who says he was pancaked is a character called Frank Kraft. And Frank Kraft is played by character actor Dan Hedaya. And in a kind of weird theme that is going with the podcast, we have covered actors who regularly play villains not in villain roles. So we had the incidents of Powers Booth in Rapid Fire, turned out to be not a villain, and Michael Rooker in Cliffhanger, nice guy in Cliffhanger. And here's Dan Hedaya, again, I saw him in the credits and I was like, it's probably some sort of corrupt officer or some sort of, something. Yeah. But no. Like, I mean, he was the one who got Stallone fired, but he had reason for that, and he kind of feels guilty about it, and it seems like he's just a friend and just good guy, wants to help out.
Yeah. I mean, he's the one who wants Stallone back, saying that, he's the only one that could really do it. And yeah.
So there we go. It's interesting as well, because there is like a bunch of these kind of side characters who are played by kind of decent kind of character actors. Like, the kind of guy who's the head of the control room, the character Norman Bassett, is played by Barry Newman, who people may recognize as Kowalski from cult classic 1970s film Vanishing Point. And you've probably seen him in a bunch of other stuff. He's got a very recognizable face, does Barry Newman.
Yeah. And, so I guess, what have we met? So as part of kind of some of that, because I know it'll pop up, and it pops up a bunch now, until I guess even the end, and we forgot to mention, is that the officer, George, he is in a relationship with Grace, who's in the control room, and he has her bracelet that she left from the night before. So there's a whole scene that isn't foreshadowing at all. I don't feel like that he says that he's going to give her the bracelet after his shift, and that he has something special he really wants to tell her. And she wants to hear it now, but he says she'll have to wait. And just the way it's delivered, you can kind of tell it's not going to end up well for George.
Yeah, because they kind of really hammer it home of just being like, oh, tell me now. No, I can't. I'm not going to tell you now. Oh, go on. You know, it's going to be a much better day if you just tell me now. No, I'm not going to tell you now. I'm going to tell you tonight. And you're like, oh, well, poor George. He's not going to see the end of this movie.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, so George is kind of the one going around the tunnel, kind of checking for survivors. And we see him like meet up, finding a bunch of different survivors, because he's the one who he first bumps into Roy, and he finds the old couple that are played by Claire Bloom and Colin Fox, and so he finds a bunch of people. Does he find the family, the Creighton family, as well?
I can't remember. I thought it doesn't show it, but I think he does. I think they end up being there with another group or something. Like, you don't actually see it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
because it shows them find the older couple. Yeah, it tells them, he says, stay here, so then I'll know where you're at on my way back. And then he finds Nord, which Viggo Mortensen, Nord, his driver and I guess friend, died in the blast, but he gets out and he's told, and he has all this gear in his Hummer that he grabs and kind of says that he was born or that he's going to find a way out, and he's determined that he was 6 months premature, or 6 weeks premature because he couldn't even stay. Yes.
6 months premature. Wow. Yeah. That would be really something if he was born at 3 months and still survived. That's pretty amazing. But yeah, that is again a lot of my kind of favorite stuff in the movie kind of happens in the kind of first 40 to 45 minutes. So much like I like the line about, the person who says it can't be done is interrupted by the one who just did it. I also like that line about him being 6 weeks early, and that he would, to show kind of how irrepressible he is. And the way he says, my own mother couldn't keep me in, and if that was true, then nothing can stop me, basically. Which was pretty fun. Yeah,
and it is a shame, as we will kind of talk about more, especially with George, is in this beginning bit, they set him up as a pretty substantial character, and he has kind of this arc or whatever, even with the foreshadowing. But then I felt like when Stallone comes in, he kind of just becomes this, like, he loses a lot of that, I guess, momentum, or he loses that, like, significance. He just ends up becoming just another, not a casualty, but another survivor in the group.
Yeah, I mean, Stallone kind of sucks the air out of the rest of the group in a way once he kind of comes in, because he does very much become the main character. Up until this point, we have this kind of going back and forth between Control and the tunnel, and it does feel like at this point pretty much George and Madeline are on equal footing with Stallone's character's Kit. It seems like they're kind of given an equal amount of weighting to those characters, but as soon as Kit gets into the tunnel, then he very much becomes the main character.
Yeah. And so while they're in the control room, it's basically all of the options have been, you can't get in except through the ventilation system, but the only way to keep them alive because of all the toxic fumes, they have to keep the fans going so that they can do a quick shutdown, which again just feels like just for the special effects portion, but it is, it's fun in that sense that he has to go through each fan, and each fan will kick on or re-kick on 30 seconds after the other. So it's like him trying to squeeze through these fan blades into the next one.
Yeah, before
they start back up again.
Before we kind of get into that though, I did want to kind of cut back a little bit, because we get kind of one of Madeline's kind of big hero moments, because she is the one who finds the kind of police van, the overturned police van with the delinquents, and they're kind of locked in the back of the van, obviously, and then she has to kind of, she plucks up the courage to kind of grab the keys and unlock them, and they all come out of the van, apart from the character of Mikey, who's kind of too scared to come out of the van, and she's trying to she's trying to appeal to his perviness, because she's like, do I look pretty? Does she look pretty? Don't you want to come out with the pretty girls?
Yeah. She also does the, like, oh, I'm scared too. If you were out here with me, that's why you should come here and like keep me safe. I don't know, stuff like that.
Yeah. And then Latonya just shouts at him, and that works.
Yeah. And she says, you have to be tough on these kids.
And then just fucks off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's, outside the van, there's this kind of large hanging electronic wire, and it stops them coming out the van. Like, Latonya gets out the van, but it swings down and it's now kind of hanging in front of the van doors. And neither Mikey nor Madeline know what to do, but then Madeline is like kind of thinking, well, what do you do with electrics, in terms of like conducting or, whatever. And it's like, oh, and then she kind of hits on it. It's like, oh, rubber. We need, so she takes her shoes off and grabs the electric wire with the soles of her boots, so that Mikey can get out. And at the same time, George is trying to wave to Mission Control to cut the power. And again, we get like a kind of big hero moment from Stallone, because apparently everybody in the control center is an idiot, not looking at the fucking screens that they're paid to look at.
Yeah.
And literally
they're all just kind of sitting there talking. Yeah.
Yeah, he literally says, anybody watching these monitors? And everybody's like, no, actually. Well, oh, wait, hang on. People are shouting at me.
Yeah. So, yeah, if anything, what we find out is that, like, the control room, and then it's like all politics for everybody else. We'll get into it later on with the engineers, and we're just like, well, even if there are survivors, oh, well, we got to keep this structure going so we can use it again.
Yeah. It's kind of weird though, because like some characters are set up in a certain way and then immediately become something else. Because after his anybody watching these monitors moment, he is then debating with Barry Newman's character, Norman, and Norman seems like he's being entirely obstructive and being like, oh, well, weren't you fired? And like, he looks like he's a kind of character who is going to be one of those kind of bureaucratic characters getting in the way of Stallone's big rescue mission. But then like literally in the next scene, he's like being entirely helpful. They bring out the kind of miniature they've got of the tunnel, and he's kind of pointing out like, oh, these are the entrance points, and oh, this is, this is that, and being just entirely supportive.
Yeah. No, that's one of my notes, which I was going to get into later, which you even feel with most of the survivors, I guess, besides George, where it's like one scene, they're so angry at Kit and he's not doing anything right and they're not going to follow him. And then, and they're flipping each one. And then the next scene, that certain character who is very distant is now like, oh, well, we need to follow Kit. It's the only way out and things like that. And then the next scene, they're yelling, that person is yelling at him again or hates him or whatever it may be. And so there's really no, I guess, straight art with even Father Stephen and his wife. Like they have that where it's like they don't like Kit and then they do kind of, and then the wife no longer likes him. Yeah, I don't know how to It's like, what is going on here with all these characters?
Yeah, those characters in particular, that family, they flip-flop the most. Like, it is very confusing. Like, those characters, the husband and wife, Sarah and Steve, yeah, they flip-flop Steve flip-flops from being very angry to being like the kind of stolid kind of like, I'm going to help out. And Sarah seems entirely reasonable and then entirely hysterical and then, like goes back and forth between that. It's very confusing. Yeah. Like, there's other characters who are inconsistent, but like probably not as severely as those two characters are the worst offenders of just being like from scene to scene, you do not know what you're getting.
Yeah. And I felt like, I get the point that, well, they're the only ones there with a small child, so they're going to be hysterical or they're going to have pushback or stuff like that. I get the notion, but then there was the part just watching it. It's like, man, just get rid of them already or something, because like they're by far the only ones that I was like, I just don't know. They're just all yelling for no reason now, and they're giving pushback for no reason.
Yeah, for sure. It just seems like the script was like, oh, we need a little bit extra antagonism to spice up this scene. It doesn't seem to come from anywhere other than that. I was just being like, yeah, this will add a bit more drama.
Yeah. And so Nord finds what they're called are wormholes, and he decides he's going to basically find a path for them to go to get to the surface. But during that time, they're learning about, or Kit is learning about how to get in, and doing that he has to go through the fan that I was mentioning prior. And they're it's very scattered, but Madeline is on the radio with Kit, and he's warning her, don't let Nord go in there because it's very unstable, but she's not able to hear any of that part of it. But yeah, so you're getting kind of these cut back and forths between that for a bit. Just like most of this, where you're getting most of the beginning where it's like a lot of frantic cut backs and forth, where I think it helps with that tension, I'd say. I'll give it that much. Like the scatteredness of it.
Yeah. I think actually, to be fair, I've just realized, I don't think we ever actually mentioned that eventually they did turn the power off and Madeline was fine.
Oh, yes.
We kind of talked about that scene and then talked about what was happening in the control room, but didn't talk about the kind of denouement of that scene of like, oh yeah, and they cut the power off and the survivors survive another day.
Yeah, she's just zapped her. That would have been
the audience might be assuming there. What's happened to her? Was she fried? Was it like?
Yeah.
But I have to say, like, in terms of like cutting back again to this moment with Kit going through these series of fans, which interestingly kind of mirrors the scene in Judge Dredd, although that's just one big fan that he goes through in that film. He looks like he's going to run through another one, but then he like just ducks through the floor because he has to save Rob Snyder's stupid ass. Yeah, so again, I just thought about that because, more fan action. But like, this scene's real good. Like, part of the problem of this movie is like, this scene and the explosion scene at the start are the two most exciting things that happen. And they happen within the first kind of 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But if you want to...
I agree.
If you want to go through the, what happened, because it's like, it's quite a complicated, system like scene. So if you want to go through, like, what actually happens in this action scene, because it's not just one big fan that he goes through.
No. So the concept is once they shut off the fans, that he has, it's like a minute before the system will start up again. So, and then it's every fan after that. There's 4 fans, I think. They'll start 30 seconds after the prior fan. So the power gets shut off, but the fans are still going because of the momentum. So they have to use like this big wrench basically and shove it in there, and that kills all of the time for the first, the first fan, notes, so much so that...
I have put in my notes, fan stock by world's largest spanner.
Yeah.
That thing was comically huge. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, they shove it into the belt, the fan's belt, and then, it gets to the point that the timer gets so low that he just has to jump through. So he's able to jump through onto the next set of fans. And what you start seeing is the fans are, because of the momentum, they're still kind of turning, and he's on top of them. And he's, and you see the countdown of 30 seconds for whatever fan. And so he squeezes through one and then falls onto the next one. And then it has him squeeze through another one. But this time his radio gets caught. So he has to basically cut his radio off to squeeze through, or, he'd be sliced up. So, and then finally the third one, he has to squeeze through, but then hook the tether to it, but to the center, but he's unable to, so he just has to hook it to one of the fan blades itself, which adds for kind of interesting effect. So once he squeezes through and he's on this rope, the rope is spinning, causing him to spin more and crash around the sides of this, big cylinder. So he has to start running with the fan as he's descending into this, into the hole, basically.
Yeah.
Which then gets him into, where all the fans are blowing, and it's slammed up against this wall and because of all the air and having to climb out, then place a charge on the door because he's unable to open it.
And I thought it was quite funny because as cheesy as it is, and as over the top as it is, that beside each fan, there's these giant digital timers, countdown timers. It does actually add to the tension of the scene.
Yeah. Well, what I was curious about is they make it this is the only way to get in. But then I guess, as we were discussing off air, was this concept of when the plot is sillier in these disaster films. It's more logic stuff is more forgivable. And when it's more serious, then you start noticing it more. And that's what I guess I was noticing of, so wait, the fans are the only way to get through, yet you have this, this electronic equipment in between each fan, and you have these doors and stuff. So how do the people get up there? Wouldn't there be another path to get to these points? Because somebody would have to program this stuff. And I don't know. So that's, where the logic affected me.
Yeah, that's true. I think, there's some films, I would go against you and be like, oh, well, you're just on a hiding to nothing, Craig, trying to put these logic points. But I'm kind of with you because in this movie does have a slightly more, it has a goofy tone to start with, kind of. There's these goofy moments that we talked about, the kind of three big moments that we kind of talked about that are definitely the goofiest moments in the movie, but it definitely, as I kind of we were talking about off air, this is definitely more deep impact than Armageddon, it's generally played as a relatively serious melodrama, instead of an out and out kind of silly action, or even though it has over the top action beats within it.
Yeah, but so this is kind of where we get the first pushback for no reason. So the charge blows, and because he was so close to it, he's disoriented and he can't really hear well at first, and so he comes out of the grate, and everybody's asking him questions, and they start they're kind of really mean to him. Here's the guy that came in to save them with the team, and they're upset that he's the only one there. And they're like, well, we're not even going to listen to you, Mr. Expert. We're going to listen to, to Nord because he's going to get us out of this. And they get to the point that they're even hostile with him, that one of the characters tries to put him in a chokehold, saying that he's not the one in charge. And it just feels aggressive for no reason, I guess.
I've literally put in my note, Kit explodes manhole, everyone shouts at him.
Yeah.
And like you say, he is attacked by Kadeem, who is the biggest fan of Roy Nord and really believes in Roy's ability, his climbing ability, because he's seen those extreme sports adverts, so he knows he's a real good climber. And, he's just like, you're not the boss around here, and kind of stops him, because Kit wants to go in to kind of stop Roy climbing where he's climbing, because Kit knows going to that part of the tunnel is going to crumble, is going to come down on Roy's head at any second. But Kadeem just doesn't want to let him in, and Sly seems kind of consigned to it. He's just like, yeah, sure, if you want to be the boss, you're the boss. And even when the guy attacks him, he doesn't really attack back. It's George who puts him in a chokehold and lets Kit go and talk to Roy.
Yeah. And well, that even pops up. I don't know, there's so many moments where you'd feel like in other movies he would have either been aggressive or hit the guy, like especially with Steven at point, but he never does. He's just kind of, which I guess is a good kind of character element, but yeah, that happens, and then he goes into the tunnel, which Vincent quickly scurries and follows him, and and everybody wants to basically go in and just follow Kit, because they're frantic and they just want to get out, and they think that's the easiest. That's going to be the way out, even though Kit, the professional, has clearly said that no, it won't be.
It's definitely
and again, nobody apparently they believe. Yeah,
but Roy definitely thinks he knows what he's doing, even if he doesn't really. He's just overconfident in his abilities, as he says that he didn't get this far, without having the instinct for the torque of any given situation. But he did not have the torque of this given situation.
No, because you see this large metal piece hanging from this chain at several points, and you're like, oh, it's going to snap. It's going to snap. And you're just kind of, it cuts back to it a couple of times. And you're like, hey, okay, any point now, it's going to snap. But yeah, it finally, but Kit, he even, for somebody who doesn't want to leave anyone behind, as we talked about, or made a joke about in the beginning, he's just kind of to the point where it's like, okay, well, good luck, Nord. And then he just...
Yeah, he just immediately gives up on Roy.
Yeah. And then he's like, we need to go now.
Yeah, he manages to get Vincent out of there, but he just immediately gives up on Roy. And yeah, I mean, like, we kind of discussed that the main goofiness of the movie has gone, but this scene is kind of goofy as well, because the way Roy dies is like, he falls down, he notices he's basically about to get flattened by all this rubble. He like puts his hands on his hips, spits out his gum, and is just kind of resigned to it of being like, I fucked up, fair enough.
Yeah. And then you don't even really see any, you just see all the stuff just smash down. And that's it.
Yeah.
And then it quickly cuts to Kit and Vincent scurrying out of this tunnel where they have to go through, and it's all crashing and it's about to explode. And this was the crazy part, is that so Vincent gets out, and Kareem, he is so upset that Vincent went in first or something. He's like, he said something about, I can't remember the exact phrase, about you betrayed me or you tried to go before me, and he's going to hit him with a rock.
Yeah.
So Kit and Vincent move out of the way, and then just a big explosion and gulf of fire shoot out of the little hole, sending Kareem like flying into a wall. And it's not just like the wave of the explosion; it's full on, like the fire, everything just like shoots him into the wall.
Yeah. And this is where we get into the logical issues again, because not only should Kadeem be flambéed, but also, like, the way he is propelled into the opposite tunnel wall, his spine should have basically been snapped in half. And also, like, he is also impaled by a metal pole at the same time. And yet, he is surprisingly intact. I mean, he dies seconds later, fair enough, but he should have already been very, very dead already. He shouldn't have had like a death scene where we get a mini moment of melodrama with shit to do with his bad relationship with his dad, because the old guy is saying like, "Oh, I'll tell your dad you died like a hero," and like the last thing that Kadeem says is like, "He won't believe it," and then he croaks it, and it's one of those things of like, as we'll discuss further, there's a bunch of melodramatic moments in this movie, and it's made to be real melodramatic. Like, they really lay it on thick with Randy Edelman's piano score, and the way it's the way it's directed and everything. They're really like aiming for people to be tearing up in this scene. But it's just some of the melodramatic moments later on in the movie kind of work. This is not one of the melodramatic moments that works. And there is a bunch of them that are kind of like, yeah, we just don't care. We don't know enough about this character. And, like, maybe if we'd heard about his dad before, or like we'd been given anything about this character before.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I don't know. It's just one of those things where, like, if it would have happened later on in the movie, his death, then yeah, it might have worked what they were intending to do. But it doesn't.
I love as well that he'd been like, he's been caught up in this fireball, and yet the only kind of major after effect of the fire is the fact that his orange jumpsuit is now kind of covered in kind of smoke stains. That's pretty much it. Yeah. That is the extent of the fire damage that has been done to him.
Yeah. Well, and then after, you would think, okay, well, Kit warned everybody, so obviously we should listen to this man now. But no, people are still kind of very hesitant to listen to him.
Yes, basically everybody's still shouting at him.
Kind of and this is where then it comes out where Sarah knows kind of about his scandalous history, even though she only knows what the tiny bit of the headline said, that he got some people killed. And so she's upset, saying she doesn't why would anybody want to follow him if he got people killed? And again, the back and forth goes too much, because then Steven gets so upset by it and is yelling, to the point that then Sarah's like, "Calm down, Steven. Well, you set it up."
Yeah, but it's at this point that the tunnel starts to flood, and there's like a weird moment as well where Kit is talking about dangers of hypothermia. And then one character, I think it's Latonia, is like, "What's hypothermia?" And then we get an explanation on hypothermia, which I was like, I don't think that's really needed for the audience.
Yeah, well, there's that point with Maddie or Madeline where, like, the rubber with the electricity, it's like there's these moments where you feel like, so is this supposed to be kind of, I know some of these disaster movies, they try and do that where it's educational too, in the sense of, well, we're showing kind of a dramatized version of what really could happen. So here's some information, because even that scene going back is like her talking to herself and explaining, when lightning strikes, if you're in your car, it won't affect it because, it's rubber of the tires. That means the rubber on the soles. And like, she's explaining that, she's talking to herself out loud.
Yeah.
But there's several moments that's like it's being explained to the audience.
Yeah, that's very true. But after that, we kind of get like, Kit kind of gets people on side, because he cuts a big inspirational speech on top of a car, and that seems to kind of get people on side and kind of shut people up. Well, mainly Steven up, who's like the one who's doing most of the shouting at him at this point in time. And then he's kind of ordering different people to do different things. So he wants somebody to go to the other end of the tunnel, and Steven is the one he kind of nominates for some reason, despite him being the most antagonistic towards us. Like, do you want to take this job? And Steven's like, no, I've got to protect my family, which comes with some real great sarcasm from Sarah. It's like, yeah, because you're so good at that, referring back to the affair that we had heard about at the start of the movie, which I thought was quite fun.
Yeah. And so George, ends up going, and pretty much from now on, the only information George gives, the information saying that the Jersey side is uphill, so all the water that is coming in would be going towards the New York side. So if they want to or stay out of the water longer, they would want to go towards Jersey. And and it's kind of, that's a tiny bit of what his character, I guess, becomes once, as we were talking about before, once Stallone comes in. Like, he does that, he gives a little bit more information later on, and that's kind of it for him in this weird way. Yeah,
pretty much. And then we get a scene of, like, apparently, even though she doesn't really help out that much, but Kit apparently really needs somebody to go with him to set this explosion off that he's going to set off to kind of stem the not stop the flooding, stem the flooding. And he says that Madeline is the woman for the job, because he saw what she did with the rubber soles grabbing the big electronic wires. So, like, he knows that she's got the guts for it, and Madeline's doesn't seem quite so convinced. And then we get a scene of them sitting on top of a car where Madeline is babbling on about why she can't help Kit. And then it feels like, I don't know, I watched this in the UK on Netflix, and I do not know if on your Blu-ray the cut is quite so weird, but it seems like basically there is an edit that cuts Madeline and Kit off mid-conversation, and then we cut to two guys looking at a blueprint of the tunnel who turn out to be city engineers.
Okay, so did you get the oyster conversation?
Yeah, got the oyster conversation, but the oyster conversation comes after the debate between EMS and the civil engineers. Okay, so
the version that I watched, I don't know, maybe I don't think I stepped away, but no, the only scene I got regarding that was, I think, a little bit later, and it was when it was I can't remember if it was the mayor or whoever, where they're arguing with her, and she's saying, the engineers are who call the shots, so we gotta start digging. But there was nothing about, no engineer scene. It was basically, he's convincing Madeline with the oyster thing, and it goes right into
what happens is
setting up the bomb.
Yeah, so what happens is Frank and the female EMS officer that we saw earlier, Bloom, they're sitting about, and it's two civil engineers, and then I didn't read that woman as being the mayor. I just thought she was the head of city engineers, or she was the head of the engineer people, and she gave the ruling.
I didn't know.
So that happens. So the in between them talking on the car, then that scene happens, then it cuts back to them, and then he gives the Roy Oyster analogy, which was quite fun.
Yeah. Okay. So then, I think it was the same, but the cut didn't seem too bad on my version.
I don't know. It just seemed like it abruptly moved to that scene. It seemed abrupt to me, but it's a minor point. It's not something to dwell on, I suppose.
Yeah.
I should mention as well, one thing that we didn't mention, and this is another way that the movie mirrors Cliffhanger, because this movie is also a movie that is filmed mainly in Italy, pretending to be America.
Yeah. Unfortunately for them, it's basically all interior.
Yes, it is basically all interior. So Cliffhanger, pretending to be Colorado, mainly filmed in the Dolomites. This film, pretending to be the Holland Tunnel in New York, and is mainly filmed, on a sound stage in Cinecittà Studios in Rome. 90% of this film was filmed in Cinecittà Studios in Rome. There is a couple of minor parts that were filmed in New York and New Jersey.
Okay.
So just another way it kind of weirdly mirrors Cliffhanger. The last way as well.
So,
like, the last way is Stallone was getting over a fear because, like, on Cliffhanger, before he filmed Cliffhanger, he said he had a fear of heights. And in this film, he also had fear of, like, enclosed spaces and, dark enclosed spaces and, like, going underwater. And the director convinced him to do this despite those fears because he had read up on him having the fear of heights before filming Cliffhanger. So he used the same argument of like, oh, you can get over these fears just like you go over that fear in Cliffhanger. That's the last way it kind of mirrors Cliffhanger.
Oh, wow. Well, and in some of the behind the scenes stuff, Stallone really, it makes sense now when I was watching them, that Stallone really focused on discussing that for his character, it's about like overcoming certain fears or trying to stay calm and do what's right despite having all these fears. So it makes more sense because he kept reiterating it in some of the little featurettes that I was watching on it. So now I know why, because he was actually afraid of it.
Yeah. Apparently he said to Rob Cohen that he doesn't like water, he doesn't like the dark, he doesn't like enclosed spaces.
And so much of the movie is him in the water. It's all in one big enclosed space.
Exactly. So there you go.
So, so we get this with Madeline, this raw oyster part where he's trying to convince her that she could do it by saying, think about the first person that ate a raw oyster. Like, they must have been really hungry because, it's slimy. It's like you'd have to break it open. You'd have all these kind of elements of what would even drive a person to eat a raw oyster. And then, again, unless you're really hungry. And so that's his big convincing her of saying, you could do this because you have to. Not because you want to or because whatever, but you're the type of person that if you're in a situation like this, you can do it. I guess. Yeah, it's basically the gist of that whole long conversation he tells.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting kind of character moment here as well because so he goes up, he sets the explosive, they come back down, and then the kind of wire attached to the explosive, it kind of gets tangled and he has to like untangle it, and he doesn't know if he can do it in time, and he basically tells Madeline to run away as quickly as possible, and then she's like, no, but what about you? And he says, the hell with me. And it's interesting because this character seems like depressed. The character seems like he doesn't care about his own life. He just cares about kind of saving the lives of these people and kind of making amends for the lives that were lost in this previous mission that we've not seen, but we hear about throughout the movie.
Yeah, no, and that's what I think we were kind of discussing prior, is that it feels like, again, they show these kind of really big hero moments, and then we were talking off air because for a small period of time I watched Poseidon Adventure. It was like one of my background movies when I do homework or whatever for some reason. I don't even know why. I don't like it that much, but I put it on. But it was like you could see the similarities between what his character is and then the character of like Gene Hackman. And then they have these kind of hero moments to make him the Stallone savior again. But you almost feel like if they kept it with that, him just trying to find redemption and his, not even thinking that his life was worth anything, it would have made for that would be one of those elements to like make it more grounded or make it more, I guess, work with what tone they were going for better. If it's just about this guy trying to redeem himself.
Yeah. Because we get this kind of big depressed moment, and then 2 seconds later we get like a big hero moment where he manages to outrun a rolling tanker that's like, and then saves Madeline in one fell swoop, and and feels like kind of super heroic again.
Yeah. So, and then after that, isn't that right where we kind of get the George bit too? Do we go right into that?
George is like comes back. Yeah, George comes back from his mission, and he's all excited, and then basically what the engineers had been talking about like kind of drilling into the tunnel, kind of making the assumption that there is no survivors, or nobody's going to survive this. They probably can't get out, and we don't want to cause a big traffic jam in New York, so like fuck these people is basically the decision. And then they drill into it, and then part of the tunnel falls apart, and George gets caught up in that. And then he is basically pinned down by a pickup truck that kind of basically falls on top of him. But this is one of those weird things which, in terms of like what we've been talking about before, of character consistency, of like suddenly we have, and it's supposed to feel like this real kind of big feel good moment, and it kind of does. But it kind of doesn't make sense at the same time, because suddenly the group completely unifies. Everybody is absolutely on the same page, and everybody really cares about George, even though most of them don't really know him at all. And it's like, yes, let's save George. Let's all work together. I was also entertained by the fact that like Stallone's character does try to lift the pickup truck himself, thinking he could do that, apparently.
Yeah. And so George, from what we know by this point, is that you don't know how hurt he is, but you can assume that either his back is broken or something, because he can't feel the rest of his body. And so Kit grabs a hose too, and the water is basically starting to go over them, and he puts the hose in George's mouth and is telling them to stay there. And then everybody comes in and they all lift it up together, and they're able to get him up, and it's like playing the music, and exactly like you said, it's supposed to be this really good feel moment. And my big issue, and we talked about this again before, was that it's not instantly, but within a couple of scenes, it feels like that moment was then purposeless or wasted, or it turns sour, because it's like you give all of this and this big unifying thing, and then which we'll get to, and we can talk about more when we get to that scene. But yeah,
for sure, which is not that far away, but it's kind of undone kind of almost immediately in a way as well, because we get a scene of like Kit talking to Madeline a bit more about the way he was fired and how that whole mission went south. And then we get a bunch of the characters just kind of haranguing Kit before he kind of formulates a plan of like, oh, you gave us false hope and then no hope, it's the thing that, Sarah says, who is now completely hysterical. Before she seemed a relatively reasonable character. I mean, previously when she was kind of haranguing Kit, it was just kind of like, oh, you're that guy who had that failed mission. I've heard about you. But now she is just in complete hysteria. So her character's kind of flipped. And, and it goes to the point of, so not only that, her daughter, or Danielle, who's played by Danielle Harris, which horror fans we should have mentioned that. Scream Queen Danielle Harris.
Yeah. She, like, even apologizes for her parents to Kit, of like, they were wrong, please just save us, stuff like that. But yeah, Sarah almost becomes more insufferable than Steven was prior. Like, Steven was just yelling and all of that, whatever, prior. And then Steven almost becomes Kit's right-hand man in some weird way, even though he's not, and not at all. But then Sarah is just kind of mean. Like, she's just given up in a way, and she's just rude about everything.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
Yeah, 'cause like, It is weird because, like you say, you know, Stephen, you know, played by J.O. Sanders, he is like this kind of swaggering macho dickhead who's like competing with Kit to be top alpha in earlier scenes, and now he's just kind of like, oh yeah, Kit's a great guy, you know, I'm anything to help Kit, you know, like,
Yeah.
But so yeah, it's just weird, the kind of character motivations of they just kind of skip from one thing to the next, without any kind of connective tissue. It's just
and so we get all that. He goes ahead and he finds, because he talks to George, who says, which I guess wasn't too big of a deal, but way early on when they were looking at the structure, there were some bunkers for people when they would do like the 36-hour shifts that they could go and sleep and eat and everything in the tunnels. But those have all been sealed off, is kind of what has been said. But Kit remembers that information and asks George where, you know, if he remembers any sort of like latches or hatches or kind of hidden tunnels or stuff like that he would know about. And George says at booth 3, which Kit goes down there and he's able to find basically this bunker that was used for napping or eating or whatever, that of course has a giant crucifix to, like, I don't know, give the themes more and stuff like that of hope and everything. But
yes, I feel like there's connective tissue there, because much like Judge Dredd was inspired by the Lady Law statue, Kit here is inspired by the giant crucifixion scene and the statue of Jesus on the crucifix. And I've literally just written down in my notes, heavy-handed religious symbolism.
Yeah, and it really is. It's not like a little thing. It pops up now several times where it's like, it makes sure the camera to show this crossbone. And
I would be remiss if we did not talk about one of the other finest lines from this movie, where Sage Stallone's character, Vincent, says to Daniel Harris's character, if we don't die in here, can I give you a call?
A kid, he's going to juvie.
It's kind of weird as well, because it seems like he's kind of been portrayed as he's slightly, like, in real life, Sage Stallone, we discussed in the Rocky V episode, sadly passed away at a very early age, but in real life, Sage Stallone's only a year older than Danielle Harris, but in this movie, he's kind of portrayed as being a bit older, and like Danielle Harris, who was like, I believe like almost 18 at the time, something like that, there is a scene where Steve says that she's 14, so it gives it this kind of creepy vibe, and she does look younger, even though there is literally in real life, like, he was born in 76, she was born in 77, so there's like no age difference between them, but it just seems kind of weird and off, because we've established in this movie she's supposed to be 14, and it seems like in this movie he's supposed to be like 18 or something, so it seems like kind of off.
Yeah. No, I agree, because there's the whole point where he talks about buying a car and all that. I don't know. It just, the way they play it makes it feel like he's older. I would have even, I don't know. I even thought before they said juvenile at one point, for some reason I thought they were just even older than 18, but I don't know why, because they just all look it.
Even though, even though they weren't that old, like Sage Stallone would have been like 20 at the time, so like, you know, or maybe when they were filming it, maybe 19, but
maybe because they have him have like full facial hair too, which I know, you know, teenagers can have, but it just makes them look that much older.
Yeah, it just looks like there's more of an age difference, and I think it's just because, like, Danielle Harris is playing younger than she actually is. Like, you know, like, there's just that one scene where it is established that she is 14 apparently, even though like she would have been 18 or 19 in real life.
Yeah. So after he has his, I guess Kit has his religious experience, he goes back to basically tells them all to head over to booth 3 and he'll meet them there. And they're like, oh, well, what about George? And he says, well, we'll go check it out and then come back for George. But this is kind of where, as we were talking about, when George, the scene of them saving George, it feels like it's kind of lost that power, because then it's instantly him talking to George about saying, there's a way I could save these people, but you can't go that way because your neck's broken.
Yeah. And then George is just kind of immediately accepting of his fate for some reason. And he also gets to say the title of the movie, because he goes, get them to daylight. And it's like,
yeah,
someone said the title of the movie. That's always fun, isn't it?
Yeah. And so this is what I think you're talking about earlier in the podcast, is saying, there's certain deaths that, that do work. And I think this one with George, it does with its melodrama, where, he's talking about that he never had kids, or he never, owned a nice car, or had a wife, but he finally found a woman he loves, and he wasn't able to tell her that. And do you think she knows? Which Kit says, yeah, I think she knows. And he gives Kit the bracelet, saying to give it to her. But yeah, he knows basically that he's a goner and just to go on. And yeah, and I don't know, basically what I felt was, if they were going to do that whole scene of him breaking his neck and then saving him in that way, it's like, it almost switched, where in the beginning I was like, oh, okay, he's obviously going to die because of all the foreshadowing. Then that scene came along, and it sets up this, well, maybe he might make it now because everybody came together to save him. Which would have been different if they let him die, or if they couldn't save him and that he died, by drowning instantly when the truck was on him or something.
Yeah, that's true. But it could have still been a galvanizing moment for the group, because they tried and they nearly did it, but even if it wasn't entirely success. Yeah. But yeah, we get more kind of character inconsistency of so all the characters are kind of going down underwater to get to this bunker, to a bit of safety. And I've just put in my notes, Steven's suddenly helpful now. Because he's just kind of guiding folk down and being the right hand man.
Yeah, he's the last one to go in, make sure everybody else goes first, because Kit went first to kind of lead them and be the one to make sure they come out of the water, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so each one goes under, but Cooper, the dog, somehow gets lost underwater at some point.
The lead snaps. So Cooper possibly lost underwater, or maybe not. We shall see very soon. But
Kit, which I thought was interesting. So Kit specifically tells everybody, we're going to wait it out. At one part, but everybody should huddle together for body heat. And so what does everybody do? They all break off, not huddling together for body heat. It's maybe two of them together or whatever. It's why wouldn't
the Crichton family, they're huddling the three of them. The old couple are huddling together, the two of them. Madeline and Kit are huddling together. No, they totally don't follow the advice at all of oh no, I think Kit meant just kind of huddle together as one big group for kind of warmth. But no, just stay in your own family units. That was how they interpreted that message.
Yeah. And so this is the point where we kind of get a little bit more about, she really wants to go find the dog, and she's upset, the older woman, and it's because the dog was their late son's dog, and so it's really all that they had left of their son, who we know he died in Nepal, I guess several years prior.
Yeah. But because this information had only been given to us minutes before, this is one of those melodramatic notes that doesn't work, because you're oh, these characters have been amongst the most thinly sketched. The old couple are amongst the most thinly sketched characters of the whole movie, and then we get this information, which is, literally we've only been given like 5 minutes before, and we're supposed to really care about it. We're like, I suppose it's sad, like any parents losing their son is obviously sad. It's just like, I don't know. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, it feels like some of it feels like throwaway lines too. I don't know.
Yeah, very much so. Like, it's just kind of like, it's like what we were saying earlier about the antagonism thing of like characters constantly shouting at Kit and always having at least one character, just haranguing Kit. There's certain things that it does that it feels like, oh, this is deliberately adding a little bit of extra antagonism that doesn't really make sense, but it's just supposed to increase the tension of the movie. And it's the same with some of these melodramatic moments where it's like, oh, these are supposed to be these emotional grace notes, but they've not done any of the legwork for some of them. Some of them kind of work. Like the moment with George, because they did do a bit of legwork, and even though it's kind of thinly sketched, George's romance with Grace and stuff like that, it is sketched enough, and Stan Shaw gives a good enough performance that it bleeds through, to me anyway. And it works. Yeah. And it does feel like, oh, you got a little bit of a frog in your throat, because it's like, oh man, George was one of my favorite characters. I'm really going to miss George. Whereas some of the other kind of melodramatic moments is just kind of like, I'm sorry. I'm not really fussed that this character is now passed away. It's sad, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and even during that scene, so what ends up happening is the wife, she gets tired and falls asleep and then passes away, from hypothermia. And that too, because then immediately the water starts coming in more and the rats start coming in, that moment is almost, again, I guess, thrown away as well.
Because it's like,
we just learned she's dead. They gotta go, and they got, it's like,
it's not given any room to breathe. It's just like, the older woman, Eleanor, she dies, and then it's like, she's dead now, but anyway, plot is happening. Oh, rats are here now. Wait a second. Rats are going through a hole in the other wall. Rats no way out. Oh, let's move this Jesus statue. They've gone in behind here. Way out. Great. So we're kind of like moving on with the plot, and it's just kind of like, dead now. Right. Anyway, don't care. But one of the things I wanted to note about this scene as well is like when the rats come in and everybody freaks out and everybody's like, oh my god, rats, and is trying to kind of climb up the walls to get away from the rats, and everybody's screaming, rats! Ah! Like, Sarah's nonchalance in this scene is hilarious, because she has given up at this stage and she is just sitting on the steps like the rats all around her, just being like, you know what? I've seen it all today. I just don't give a fuck.
Well, I was almost in the same point of like I don't know, there were some people, they were so upset with the rats, especially with like
Latonia.
The one who really, Latonia. She freaks out to the point of like, she jumps up on the wall, is just hysterical. Like, wait a minute, you've seen all these explosions, all this other stuff, and these characters are more upset almost with these rats than all of this other stuff.
That is true. The only way it would have been more perfect for me is if, like, Sarah had somehow managed to keep a packet of cigarettes dry on her person somewhere, and just like lit up a cigarette and was just like sitting on the steps, just like, just don't care. It's just one of those days. Everything's gone wrong anyway, so like, fuck it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then Madeline, she convinces them that, or what did she say? That they shouldn't be afraid because all they are is shit with legs. Or something like that.
Shit with legs.
That's what rats are.
Yep. Another classic,
Yeah.
I mean, this movie does have some fun lines in it, I've got to say. Between this and the Steve Stallone's line about giving her a call and, the Roy Oyster analogy and, the bit about Roy, knowing the tension of it, every, given situation and all that. And the new chief, Mr. California. I still think Mr. California's line is probably my favorite, about about the person, not doing it. It has such a good payoff, I suppose. It's just because he's immediately flattened right after he says the line. The person who says it can't be done is interrupted by the one who just did it. And he walks manfully in and is immediately killed. It's possibly my favorite moment in the film.
Yeah, it's up there. So so basically they are able to bust through and follow, I guess, into another room, which leads to this old wooden staircase where there's kind of some other equipment, and the staircase is rickety, but which I didn't get because you could see through the little bits of light that it was a staircase, and then they have a line of oh, that staircase leads up somewhere. Yeah, all staircases would have loved.
That's just more of the great writing in this film.
Yeah, and because they already took out some other characters, they make sure to bring in Cooper and stuff. Again, the dog randomly pops up.
The dog comes back in the water, and this is how Kit ends up falling into the water, because he has to go and rescue the dog, because we can't let the dog die. God forbid that we let the dog die.
Yeah, I mean, Eleanor already died. You can't have Roger lose Eleanor and his dog and his son, which we just learned about.
Yeah, which we learned about 5 minutes before. Yes, it would just be too much for one life. So, yes, the dog has to survive. And then, I mean, this was the kind of classic period of generally people don't like when animals die in movies, but I think there's some particularly hilarious examples. I think I've not watched Dante's Peak in a long time, but reading about this movie, apparently there is a similar scene in Dante's Peak where Leslie Bowen obviously had certain motifs, so there is a very similar scene. And I think one of the most hilarious scenes of a dog surviving in a movie is where in Independence Day the dog jumps out of the way of that fireball in the tunnel, in the road tunnel. Yeah. But again, I suppose this is not the Independence Day episode, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So I can confirm, because since I bought the dual pack with the Blu-ray of Daylight and Dante's Peak, my wife and I, we watched Dante's Peak the night before.
Right.
And there's the scene where the dog is missing for a long period of time, and then they're driving at one point, and it's just standing on this little rock as the lava's coming down, and they're able to get it to jump into the truck.
Brilliant.
And
Oh, I'm sure we watch it whenever we do a Pierce Brosnan season at some point.
Yeah. Or Linda Hamilton.
Well, we can't really do a Linda Hamilton.
But
basically it was Terminator 2 and then that one, there's not a whole lot of action movies she was in there as far as I'm aware. Don't know if we could do a whole Linda Hamilton season. Nothing against Linda Hamilton, who I think is great. I just don't know if we can do a whole season on her. Anyway, what's happening in Daylight?
Okay, so Pierce
Brosnan
Kid goes down. He gets Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan comes in, saves the day. No.
Yeah, the name's Bond, James Bond. What are you doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. So Kit jumps down. He's able to get the dog up, but more of the staircase just collapsed, and he tells everybody to leave. And again, this feels like a moment, what I was mentioning prior with Poseidon Adventure, where I'm going to spoil a movie that's, very old. So I apologize if you haven't seen it. With Poseidon Adventure, Gene Hackman, he has this moment where the only way to open up the door is you have to crank this thing, but it's way over all of this water and these pipes and stuff, and whoever does it, they, probably won't make it back. But he's cranking it open, and despite him being a reverend who's kind of lost his faith, he's cursing at God and saying, take him instead of them and stuff like that. And then finally, he knows he doesn't have any more strength for himself to go back over, so he just lets himself drop or whatever. That, up until this point, feels like the trajectory, I guess, for Kit, for that character too, where I'm like, oh. So he does that, he's saying go on without him, but then Madeline leans forward more and she falls in. And then starts becoming very hysterical about, well, you can't leave us. And they don't want to leave them now, group, but they finally all decide to go. And they toss him a light. And because there's a sewer tunnel, or what are they called? Like a grate that they're able to see that'll lead the rest of the group to daylight. And and so they're in the water, and Madeline now has completely shifted tones again, and she's hysterically crying and yelling at them, saying she wouldn't leave and all this stuff. And but they're still stuck in the water. That's basically it. And trying to figure out where to go from there, which they have to backtrack.
And they go underwater, and then they get back to this little bit, and then we get one of the other best lines in the movie. Do you want to give this one?
Is this when Kit is yelling at the stuff, or is it when...
Yeah, this is when Kit is yelling at the stuff.
Yeah. So again, this kind of goes with what I was just talking about with the Poseidon Adventure Gene Hackman thing, where he's putting a charge in it because their thoughts are, they talked about prior, where if there's enough pressure and a blow up, it will basically shoot them through the water to the surface. But it's very dangerous, but it's all they have. And so he punches into the dirt with one of the charges, or like the mud, and yelling about yelling at the structure, basically saying that you should have taken me and not them because I found your heart. And yeah.
I just love the way he delivers the line. So he says, I found your heart, and I'm going to blow it out of your body.
Yeah.
Dear. If this movie wasn't PG-13, you probably would have swore as well.
Yeah. And so they're going to do that, and then, again, we kind of get a cut back to them coming out of the grate. Grace and Norman are just basically going to leave for the day. And they happen to, nice coincidence that they're the ones that find the group, and they're able to pull them up, and the group is all being brought up and given their shots or towels or whatever. And Grace keeps waiting and waiting. And even Steven is sitting there, and he's waiting. Like he's waiting to see if Kit, because he knows that Kit's going to make it, but no. Because
they're best mates now for some reason.
Yeah. And the EMP kind of just says, nobody else is coming. And this is where we get, again, that arc that was skimmed over with the family of Stephen and his daughter and Sarah have now kind of all reconciled. Like they're all a nice family unit, because that was something that was supposed to be an issue, but then was thrown out. But then Grace has a very kind of melodramatic moment, because they say that, again, nobody else is coming out, which it's weird. The scene feels strange, because it's like one of those where she's crying and having this beat, and it feels like a scene where then you would see George pop up after in any other movie. It's like, oh, nobody else is alive, and then the person comes out. But no, George is dead. But
George is just dead. No, there's been forgotten about at this stage, fortunately.
So you just kind of see Grace cry, and then we jump back to Kit and Madeline, and they're setting off the explosion, and through it, he's pushed down under the mud more, and then she comes over, grabs his hand, the explosion happens, and she's being sucked up, and she's trying to hold on to him, and again, thinking that he's going to just sacrifice himself because that's where it's all leading. He lets go of her hand and she shoots up above the water and, ends up in the, was it the New Jersey River? I can't think of the river itself.
Is it the Hudson?
But yes, the Hudson. Yes. Okay. And then,
And the rescue boats are very conveniently placed.
Yeah, they're all over the place because apparently they knew that people would be shooting up out of the water.
And they also knew exactly where they would be shooting up from the water. Like, they obviously figured out the trajectory exactly of where they would pop.
Yeah, and not only that, though, because it's a Stallone movie, and he can't die. He pops up
absolutely true.
Randomly floating. And he's able to, it's not like he even needs resuscitation or anything. She just kind of flips him over, and he coughs up some water, and then he's okay for the most part. Besides having to go on a stretcher.
Yeah, and then pretty much Kit gives Grace her bracelet back following George's wishes, and then the movie kind of ends in the way that so many 90s action movie ends, with either somebody about to be bundled into an ambulance or actually being bundled into an ambulance.
Yeah, and what I didn't get with the Grace scene is I thought he would at least say, because there's the whole bit of George saying, I never got to tell her I love her. He ends up saying it to himself after they all leave. But I felt like, you'd almost want Kit to have said he wanted to say he loved, I don't know, like something to tie it together better.
Yeah.
Or say that he was going to tell you tonight he loved you or something. I don't know.
Yeah. It does feel like it should have been wrapped. It does feel like the character of George deserved better. These characters deserve better. But, this being the 90s, we're moving back to our more important white characters. For their quippy banter.
Yeah, so that they're going to going to go to the hospital, and she's talking about how, she's going to ride with him, and he says, well, I thought you're leaving. She goes, well, I don't look too great right now. I have no job,
she's homeless.
No home. Yeah, and
she's got no car.
Yeah, and so I'm going to ride with you. So I'm going to ride with you. He says, well, on one condition. We take the bridge.
Boom.
And then,
we end on a quip, and then a very awkward shot of the Twin Towers, and then we cut to credits.
Yeah.
It's interesting, it's weird that, so many movies have been edited post 9/11 that you would assume that this movie would have just been edited to take that shot out of just being like, oh, we'll just end on the quippy line and then cut to credits. But nope. That Twin Tower shot still there 25 years later.
I mean, it was in that Blu-ray I watched, and there was even, I don't know why, they put a lot into, for a movie like Daylight, which I wasn't, we discussed earlier, that not too many people know about. They put a lot into the Blu-ray. It was even one of the special ones where it's like, if you're connected to the internet, they incorporate new trailers, and I don't know. It was a well done one, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it must have a certain amount of audience because, I did see, looking for articles about it and looking for kind of behind the scenes things about it. There was some articles from the kind of 20th anniversary of the film. There's some articles trying to kind of critical kind of reevaluations and stuff like that. I even found one reviewer who was talking about it being his favorite Stallone movie, which blew my mind. But so there's there is fans of the movie out there. You know, it might be one of his kind of lesser known ones, you know, particularly when compared to the Rocky films or the Rambo films or even like the Expendable films or whatever. But yep, he must have some fans out there. Oh, I did want to mention as well, even though it's not quite the banger we've had in recent weeks, that we do end on a, it's weird because we've not had like a soundtrack. We've had just like this kind of score by Randy Edelman. So I assumed this one would be without a kind of theme song like we've kind of had in previous editions. And we've had a number of great end credit songs like the Dread song at the end of Judge Dredd by The Cure and you know, like the Demolition Man song by Sting at the end of Demolition Man and stuff. But this, for some reason, Daylight did have a theme. So we end on an end credit song, Whenever There Is Love by Donna Summer, which seemed quite random and out of place. But yeah, fair enough. Fair enough, Daylight. Apparently the 90s required a theme song.
Yeah, perfect. No, and I actually noticed this too, is that, so we talked about all the inconsistencies, and surprisingly, I don't know, we talked about, I think a few episodes prior with the Razzies, which I know he was nominated again for Worst Actor for Daylight. And that one was kind of shocking to me of, I guess, watching this in comparison to even some of the ones we've watched over the last couple of weeks of, you know, like, well, he wasn't even, they're just nominating Stallone just to nominate Stallone. It doesn't even feel like.
For sure.
He wasn't
I definitely agree with that. I was kind of shocked by that as well because there has been a bunch of episodes where I've like recast the role of Stallone as somebody else in my kind of fantasy remakes of some of these movies. And there has been several movies where even some of the really good ones, like Demolition Man, where I've said that I like Stallone's performance, but Stallone is like the third best thing in Demolition Man after Wesley Snipes and Sandra Bullock. And I would say this is probably his most likable performance that we've seen him in all season. Certainly is, I mean, he is, I would say he's very likable. I really like his character in Cliffhanger, and I would say up until this point in the season is probably his best acting performance is in Cliffhanger, which I think he's maybe not the best thing in Cliffhanger. He's maybe just pipped out by John Lithgow, but he's certainly close to being the best thing in Cliffhanger. And I definitely think he is the best thing in this movie and gives the best performance in this movie.
Yeah, I agree completely with that.
So, yeah, suck it, Razzies. Oh, but that's just...
Well, I think we could go into a whole conversation about the Razzies. It's like Stallone, Adam Sandler. It's like there's just certain people that they nominate just cause.
Yeah, as a matter of course. However, we need to wrap up this particular edition of All 90s Action all the time. That is just our thoughts on Daylight. We would love to hear any of your thoughts on the movie. We'd also love to hear your comments on the podcast generally. So please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, you know, wherever you're checking out podcasts, check it out, give us a little bit of a review. And remember, to give 5 stars on those reviews, because apparently if you give anything less than 5 stars, it means that we are awful. I don't know why, but that is just the way these things work. Algorithms, I don't understand them either. But anyway, that's all for this time. Just leaves me to say goodbye. And Craig, do you want to say anything before we go on out?
Not today yet. Thanks for, I don't know, it's always been fun, and I can't wait for the next episode, which is my favorite Stallone movie. So I stuck through it until now. And
that movie is Copland. But until then, see ya.